Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I've just killed my wife.
You just killed your wife?
Yeah.
64-year-old Stephen Searle appeared to be living a charmed and successful life. He lived with his wife of 45 years, Anne, in an expensive detached home in a quiet, desirable part of Suffolk. The former Royal Marine Commando had turned his sights to politics, standing as the former UKIP politician for Stowmarket South for 4 years between 2013 and 2017, and also standing as the UKIP candidate in the 2017 general election for Central Suffolk and North Ipswich. Stephen had been photographed with Nigel Farage and considered other notable politicians such as Bill Mountford amongst his personal friends. Stephen had recently celebrated Christmas with Anne and their 3 grown-up sons, Gary, Christopher and Stephen, along with their partners and families. To all intents and purposes, Stephen Searle was living the high life, but appearances can be deceptive, and the apparently successful Searle family were harbouring a dark secret, and this secret was threatening to tear the very fabric of this family apart. On the day before New Year's Eve in 2017, this secret would lead to a vicious act of violence perpetrated against Anne by her husband Stephen, and this would result in Anne's death. The events which led up to this murderous act are shocking enough, but perhaps the most disturbing thing of all is the 999 call placed by Stephen on the night of the murder. I will play the call in full for you now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I've just killed my wife.
You just killed your wife?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bit different for you tonight, I expect. Happy New Year.
Okay, and how have you killed her?
Suffocation, really, I guess. Bit of a bizarre situation, but, you know, never mind.
Okay, is it just the 2 of you in the house?
Well, just the one of us now.
Right, okay.
Yeah, well, 2, you know. Yeah.
Okay, is there any other sort of issues that the officers need to be aware of when they come into the house? Is there anything
no,
dangerous?
not really. You know, I'm not violent. I'm not nothing.
Okay. Stephen, can I just get you to go and answer the door? I believe we should have some officers there. Are you able to just go and speak to them?
Okay, they're here now, are they?
They should be there.
Right, I'm on my way. Hang on a
Okay.
moment. I'm on my way as we speak.
Okay.
Oh, hello, buddies.
The jokey and irreverent way Stephen speaks to the dispatcher is as chilling and unfathomable as the act of brutally murdering your wife of 45 years. The murder didn't come entirely unexpected to Anne, who had written this cryptic post on Facebook just days before her death. Happy Christmas. I hope I will still be here in 2018. We will see. But what was the explosive dark secret at the centre of the Searle family, and how did it lead to murder? In March, Stephen Searle had begun an ill-fated affair with the wife of his son Gary and mother of his grandchildren, 39-year-old Anastasia Pomativa. The affair began in March 2017, when Stephen invited Anastasia for coffee at his UKIP office in the council building at Ipswich. He told her he had not had sex for 6 years and asked if she would make him happy. Anastasia later told the Mirror newspaper that Stephen had used bodybuilding photographs from his youth to lure her into sex during their 3-month fling. She also stated, "When he approached me, I was shocked and surprised, but at the time I was very vulnerable because my nan was really unwell in hospital." She went on to say that she had always been intimidated by him as he's very powerful, controlling and manipulative. Over the next few months, the affair between Stephen and Anastasia developed, and they began to meet regularly for sex and to exchange explicit photographs and texts. But in May of 2017, their secret affair was about to be discovered. Anne had begun to suspect that Stephen was having an affair and confided in work colleague Kelly Lawrence. At the time, she stated that she didn't know whether he was having an affair with a man or a woman. She also stated that he had done this before. With her suspicions roused, in June of 2017, Anne guessed her husband's phone PIN was 4545 after he had served with 45 Commando Unit in the Royal Marines. A devastated Anne discovered that Stephen and Anastasia were trying to arrange a hotel meeting and discovered the explicit images and texts they had been exchanging, and she confronted her husband. This explosive secret ripped the family apart. Anastasia later told the Mirror, "I was a prat to give in, but he took advantage of my vulnerability and I felt sorry for him." Despite all the trauma and upset that had been caused, Anne had faced infidelity before, and she wanted to put her family back together. As she told her work colleague, she felt she was too old to start again. But undeterred by his detection, Stephen continued to pursue Anastasia, and his infatuation began to turn into an obsession. Police would later find that Stephen had a collection of photographs of her on his PC, and he had superimposed her head onto the bodies of porn stars. Stephen had already demonstrated that he had a short temper and was liable to fits of anger. Victoria Searle, the wife of his youngest son, later recalled an incident in the 1990s where Stephen had used a gun to threaten somebody and also reportedly let off a shot. Victoria would also later give a statement that Stephen had threatened to kill his wife in the weeks before the murder, saying, "I'll kill you, I will." And on another occasion, he had tried to push Anne down the stairs. Anne had told Victoria that Stephen kept arguing about the affair, whereas she wanted to put it behind them and move on. By Christmas of 2017, the affair was threatening to rip this fragile family apart, and on December 30th, things would culminate in a terrible act of violence. Stephen Searle told police that on the night of December 30th, he and his wife Anne had been drinking heavily and began to argue about the affair. Stephen later recounted the events of that night at his trial at Ipswich Crown Court. It was the night before New Year's Eve, and Stephen reported that he had went to get another beer from the fridge, and Anne had suddenly stabbed the arm of the sofa with a kitchen knife in a rage. He reported that he went to the toilet and upon leaving the bathroom was confronted by Anne, who was armed with a serrated steak knife. She attempted to stab him in the stomach, and Searle told the jury that he was left with minor prick injuries to his stomach after the knife penetrated 3 layers of clothing. He also sustained minor cuts to his hands as he attempted to grab the blade. Stephen reported that in the scuffle, he and Anne fell over and he landed on top of her and grabbed her right arm with his left hand and then put his right hand around her neck in a pinning movement. Stephen stated that he was concentrating on disarming his wife, and he held her in this grip for approximately 20 to 25 seconds until she eventually stopped struggling, which caused Stephen to say, "Thank fuck for that." He then said, "I'm gonna have a fag," and he got up and went into the conservatory. Anne didn't reply. Stephen said he went and bandaged his hand, which was bleeding freely, and then smoked 2 cigarettes. He said, "I was expecting her to kick off again, and when she didn't, I thought she'd gone to bed and that it would be fine in the morning." Stephen choked back tears in the witness box as he described leaving the conservatory to see his wife still on the floor, in the position he had left her. "I never meant to harm her," he said. Stephen chose not to ring for help immediately. He later said, "When I looked at my wife, I didn't think I could get her back. I knew I could not." He stated that he must have been in shock. But the man on the 999 phone call does not sound like a man who is in shock or who is devastated at accidentally killing his wife. Stephen reportedly showed little emotion throughout the trial. Forensic pathologist Dr. Benjamin Swift said that Mrs. Searle would have lost consciousness after about 8 to 15 seconds of pressure, and continued pressure caused hemorrhaging within her head and brain, leading to her death. It could not be determined at court whether Stephen had placed his wife in a chokehold, a move learned during his days as a Royal Marine Commando. The murder of Anne by her husband devastated the Searle family. Their youngest son, Stephen, said he had turned to alcohol and become depressed and suicidal following the murder. He said, "I have turned to alcohol as a release, which has affected my relationship with my wife and family, physically and emotionally." He went on to say that, "The relationship between me and my brothers has been torn apart. It has left a huge void in my heart, which is something I will never get over. Losing my mum has destroyed me. It has left me completely broken.
Good afternoon. As you are all aware today, there has been justice for my mum, Anne Searle. The thing is, this year not only have I lost my mum, but my dad as well. So now all I want to focus on is my family and my friends who can help me through this year and more to come. The part that hurts me the most is I lost my mum, but the person who took my mum away was also my best friend, who was my dad. So now it's time to focus on my family and my kids and do the best I can for them. Thank you for your time. This is my wife.
Your wife, Vicky. V-I-C-K.
Victoria.
Vicky. Your wife, Vicky. And you're Stephen. Yeah. This way, please. Thank you.
Interestingly, while the affair and murder ripped apart the relationship between the Searle brothers, it actually brought Gary closer to his wife Anastasia despite the affair. Gary told reporters that he had disowned his father, but the whole incident had brought him closer to his wife. Me and Anastasia just love each other so much that this has brought us closer together. There was a high degree of media interest in this case, yet strangely, more attention was paid by the media to some of the comments made by a former politician in relation to the incident. Former politician and friend of Stephen, Bill Mountford, told BBC Suffolk that he still considered Searle a friend, and added that these things happen. Much was made of this quote, and Mountford faced substantial criticism for minimising the murder. He was quoted as saying, "I still regard Steve as fundamentally a decent man who has found himself in circumstances beyond his control. I am not condoning it in any way, but I was very, very sad to hear of Steve's conviction. I am well aware domestic disputes can get out of hand, but I feel equally sorry for both Steve and his now deceased wife." Was this an alcohol-fueled domestic which spiralled out of control? Or was this simply the callous murder of a woman who had become surplus to requirement and who stood in the way of Stephen's deviant but blossoming affair with his grandchild's mother? During his 6-day trial at Ipswich Crown Court, Stephen showed little emotion and he did not react when the judge sentenced him to a minimum of 14 years. Stephen Searle will be liable for release in 2032.